Yo, what's up, guys? I'm back for a Week 14 prediction event, and I saw that not only did last week's video do pretty great, which I'm very thankful for, but as well as the college football Part 1 prediction show did pretty well as well. So I'm thanking you guys for that. Make sure you click that thumbs up button if you enjoy these videos. Leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think of this week's games, as well as all the other games and events. Man, my hair is just being absolutely wild today. Anyway, so moving on, we got tonight's big event. We got the New Orleans Saints sitting at 9-3, taking on that 7-5 Atlanta Falcons team. Now, last week we got to see the Falcons blow 3 timeouts with 4 minutes to go in the game and hand a victory over the Vikings. This week at home, they're playing against a very difficult and on fire New Orleans Saints team that is going to be really hard to beat, especially the way that they're playing right now. Drew Brees has 3,298 yards passing, 17 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. That's absolutely crazy good for a quarterback. And Matt Ryan, last year's MVP, 3,057 yards passing, 16 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. And I think that's going to ultimately be a big difference in this game because both of these teams like to throw the football a lot. And while Julio Jones is a great target, Drew Brees does have some pretty decent targets as well. And I think that all things considered, the New Orleans Saints being on the road against the Falcons is going to be a huge factor as well. The Vikings didn't play very well in Atlanta either, but Atlanta only scored 9 points last week against a very tough defensive football team, and the Saints are really going to be really going to have to play good defense against the Falcons if they want to win this football game, and I think that they might be able to get it done. The Saints have won 4 of their last 5 games. Their only loss against to the LA Rams by just 6 points in a 26-20 game. Their games have been a lot lower scoring than recently when their defenses has been one of the worst in the league, and the Falcons have won only 3 of their last 5, losing to Minnesota, of course, last week 14-9, and losing against the Panthers 20-17. And if you notice, they've been held to 9 and 17 points in those losses. If the Saints want to win, they have to be able to hold the Falcons to 20 or less points in this game, and I think they're going to be able to get it done. I think the New Orleans Saints win this game by a touchdown, and I think that they're going to win this game 27-20, just barely holding the Falcons to that 20-point margin, and they win this game in Atlanta. Moving on now to Sunday, we've got the Indianapolis Colts against the Bills in a garbage fest. Tickets have been selling for about $5 a piece in the cheap seats. You practically go there with your lunch money and watch this game. Both teams are in the bottom 6 in offense and defense. In terms of overall offense and defense, they're in the bottom 6, both teams. Jacoby Brissett has been a pretty iffy quarterback, 2,542 yards, 10 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Tyrod Taylor, 2,090 yards, 12 touchdowns, and just 4 interceptions. And I think that, the Bills have been playing better football recently than the Colts have. The Colts just lost by 20 to the Jaguars. Meanwhile, the Bills might have lost last week to the Patriots, but before that they beat the Chiefs. And both of these teams coming in with some pretty rough recent records. I mean, the Bills have won just 1 of their last 5 games, and the Colts 0 of their last 5 games. So it's been a pretty rough season for both of these teams, and I think that the Bills, at home, Tyrod Taylor, a more consistent quarterback, honestly, a more consistent run game. I think the Bills win this one by 10. And I think it's, the Colts are just going to have to try and regroup. They're going to have to try and find something to get this team going. I just don't think Jacoby Brissett has enough weapons on that offense to get anything done. And I honestly think it's more of the lack of other teammates who can step up and play than it is Jacoby Brissett's fault. But, we'll see who the Colts blame their lack of offensive success on. Meanwhile, speaking of lack of offensive success, so we have the 3-9 Chicago Bears taking on the 5-7 Cincinnati Bengals, a battle of the two worst offenses in the NFL. We have the 32nd ranked offense in the Bears and the 31st ranked offense in the Bengals. Both of these teams have about middle of the pack defenses, and we've got a 0-5 Bears team versus a 2-3 Bengals team, at least in the last 5 games. And the Bengals nearly beat the Pittsburgh Steelers last week, and then before that they won the previous 2 games. And I think that's going to be a huge difference in this game, is that the Bengals have a just slightly better offense. I grant you their defense is 2 ranks lower than the Bears, but the thing is that the Bears' 32nd ranked offense is so far behind the Bengals' 31st ranked offense that I just think it doesn't matter. The Bears are going to lose this game by 20 points. I think the Bengals are going to win this game pretty handily. I mean, they barely lost to the Steelers, and then they won the 2 previous games before that. They've been clicking as of late, and I think that they're just going to dominate the Bears by about 20 points in this game. They're 6.5-point favorites, but I think it's going to be pretty huge. Then we have the Packers, who are 6-6, taking on the 0-12 Browns. The Packers 3-point favorites in Cleveland. And I think this is going to be huge because I think that Brett Hundley is going to have to throw the ball. The Browns have the 10th ranked defense in the NFL. They might have that dismal 28th, 29th ranked offense, absolutely atrocious. But they have the 10th ranked defense in the NFL, and they average less than 100 yards rushing per game allowed. That is incredible. But for the Packers, that's just doubly impressive because the Packers have Brett Hundley at quarterback. Now, if you watched my review video last week, I told you Brett Hundley had 84 yards passing and an interception. He did not have to win the game throwing the football. But you're going against one of the best, if not the best, rushing defense in the entire league. Okay, maybe not the best. I think the Seattle Seahawks have a little bit of a better run defense than the Browns do, but one of the best run defenses in the entire league. That is absolutely wild. And Brett Hundley is going to have to throw the football if they want to win this game. And I have not seen Brett Hundley throw the ball well with accuracy or accurately. I know I just said that, but that's huge. And I think against a very tough run defense in the Browns, they're not going to be able to run the football very often. And I think the Browns are going to win this game by 7 and take their first win of the season right here. Either that or they're going to blow the game. I don't know how much they want that 0-16 parade, but I honestly think that the Browns have a really good matchup right here. I mean, you're going against a team that needs to run the football because Brett Hundley can't throw the football very well. Versus a Browns defense that is perfect against that run game. And I just think that could be enough right there. I mean, the turnover battle is going to be kind of important in this game, but I think the Browns can do it. They win by 7. That's my prediction right there. Moving on now to the Raiders, who are 6-6 against the Chiefs, who are 6-6. Now, this is absolutely enormous because pending the Chargers game, this could be for first place in the division. The Raiders are playing in Kansas City. The Chiefs have a 4-point favorite due to Vegas odds. So the Raiders have the 16th ranked offense and 22nd ranked defense. It's pretty dismal. Versus the Chiefs, who have the 6th ranked offense in terms of yardage and the 30th ranked defense. So I think this is going to be a really interesting game because that monumental 6th in offense is huge. But of course, recently, it hasn't been quite as successful. And now I grant you against the Jets, their offense was actually pretty solid. But, I mean, we're going against a tough Raiders team. Now, I grant you the secondary for the Raiders is a little lacking. So we'll see how that goes. The Raiders' only wins are against the Giants, Denver, and Miami over the last 5 games, while they were blown out by the Patriots and Bills in the same 5-game stretch. Meanwhile, the Chiefs have lost 4 games in a row, and the Chiefs' offense needs to be able to actually get some production going and not blow the game in the second half like they did last week. I think the Chiefs will be able to do that. A high-pressure situation against a team that barely beat a Giants team with Geno Smith at quarterback. I honestly think the Chiefs win this game by 10 points. They take the W, and they are honestly tied with the Chargers going into next week. But we'll get to that in a minute. So the 6-6 Cowboys, who are 4-point favorites to take on the Giants in East Rutherford, New Jersey. The Cowboys have the 18th ranked offense and 21st ranked defense. Meanwhile, the Giants are bottom 4 in the league in both offense and worst in the league in defense. And I think that's going to be ultimately what is their undoing. On top of having the worst defense in the league, they have their quarterback carousel going on. They got coaches changes, distractions. They get annihilated by the Cowboys. They lose it by 17. And that might even be a little too merciful. But I think a divisional game like this, I don't think the Giants play bad enough to get blown out by the biggest margin of the week. But I think they'll take this game down by 17. So the Lions, 6-6, taking on the 4-8 Buccaneers in Tampa. This is going to be a really tight football game. The Lions, 15th in offense, had a pretty rough week of it last week against the Ravens, and 26th in defense versus the 13th ranked offense in Tampa Bay and the second to worst defense in the league in that Bucs defense. Ultimately, I think this is going to be a quarterback battle, and that's going to be the difference here. Stafford with 3,302 yards passing, 22 touchdowns, 7 picks. Jameis Winston, 2,190 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. And I think that's going to be the huge key here is Winston just hasn't played enough this season where I think he can actually come out playing his best football, and I think that the Lions win it in a very, very close game on the road by 4. So I think that's going to be how that game goes. Then we've got the Vikings, who are 10-2, 2.5-point favorites on the road against the Carolina Panthers, who are 8-4 in Carolina. Now, the Vikings have the number 5 ranked offense in the entire NFL and the number 2 ranked defense. Meanwhile, the Panthers have the 19th ranked offense and 6th ranked defense. In a very defensive football game, this is going to be. The Vikings 5-0 in the last 5. The Panthers 4-1, only losing, of course, last week to the Saints. And I think this is going to be huge and very important because the Vikings have one of the best rush defenses in the league, on par with the Seahawks and the Browns. And I think it's going to be up to Cam Newton and Jonathan Stewart. They're going to need to run the football for more than 150 total yards. If they can do that, I think the Panthers win this game. But if they can't do that, I think that's going to be the difference in the Vikings win the football game. It's all going to be on that because here's the thing. Cam Newton can throw the football. I grant you that. But he doesn't do it as often as, what is necessary to win this football game. And I don't think that you should start playing the Vikings' game. They're a much better, they're a much weaker pass defense. But I think that rather than exploiting their pass defense, you should instead focus on making your offense and your specialty good enough to beat their specialty. Don't go away from your game plan just because they have a better pass defense than or a worse pass defense than run defense. Instead, prove that your run offense is better than their run defense. And I think that's going to be the ultimate key. So I'm going to say that the Panthers get this done and they win the game by 3 points on the very last drive. Stewart and Newton are going to run the football quite a bit, and they're going to get the ultimate victory, beating the Minnesota Vikings and sending them packing down to 10-3. But we'll see. I think that's going to be a huge key in this game, though. Moving on now, the 2-10 San Francisco 49ers in Houston to play the 4-8, 3-point favorite Houston Texans. And I think this is going to come down to, once again, the quarterback battle. Instead of listing off all of these statistics about the teams, it's really hard to do that because the 49ers have changed their entire outlook since Garoppolo took over at quarterback last week. And so I don't think the statistics would really tell the story here. All I know is that Garoppolo had one heck of a game last week and ultimately came out with the victory. Meanwhile, Tom Savage has been playing pretty mediocre football, and I think that's ultimately going to be the difference. I think that Garoppolo and the 49ers offense are going to come out firing, and I think ultimately they're going to end up winning this game by 10 points on the road in Houston. And Garoppolo is going to play some really good football. I think that the 49ers can really build around this guy, and maybe 2-3 years in the future they could be a playoff contender and maybe even a Super Bowl contender with Garoppolo at quarterback. I think they made a really good trade here to get Garoppolo. Meanwhile, we got the 5-7 New York Jets taking on the Broncos, who are 3-9. The Jets 1-point favorites on the road in Denver, and I think that this is going to be interesting because the Denver Broncos have the 5th-ranked defense in the entire NFL, and that's huge. But they also have Trevor Siemian at quarterback, which is also huge. And I think that the Jets, they'll take their, 2-3 interceptions that they're almost guaranteed with this guy, and they're going to win this game by 2 touchdowns. I think, they're going to have a +2 in the turnover battle, and those 2 touchdowns, those 2 interceptions are going to lead to touchdowns, which the Jets are just going to, win the football game over the Broncos in Denver by those interceptions. And I think that's ultimately the story for the Denver Broncos is no matter how good their defense is, if you just hand the ball to the other team, and you're not going to win football games. So I just don't think that's going to happen again today. Moving on now, we got the 8-4 Tennessee Titans, 3-point favorites in Arizona to take on the 5-7 Cardinals. And once again, this is kind of similar to the whole Garoppolo thing, but instead it's due to injury. I think that the Cardinals have gotten so many injuries and so many different players on both sides of the football aren't able to play this week, and I think that's going to ultimately be the difference. I think that the Titans aren't nearly as good as their record says they are, but I think they're a good enough team to beat a crippled Cardinals football team. I think they win by 4 in Arizona, and it's going to be a tough game, but I think the Cardinals could be playoff contenders, maybe even one of the top 2 seeds in the league if Carson Palmer and Adrian Peterson and all of these guys were actually healthy. Moving on now, we got the Washington Redskins sitting at 5-7. They're taking on the 6-6 Chargers, who are 6-point favorites at home. The Redskins 12th in offense, 19th in defense, but how about them Chargers 9th in the league in offense, 17th in defense? They're beating the Skins in both categories, and I think this is going to be huge because let's just check out the quarterback play for a second. Kirk Cousins, 3,289 yards passing, 21 touchdowns, and 8 picks. Phillip Rivers, 3,292 yards passing, 3 more yards than Kirk Cousins, 21 touchdowns, and 1 less interception at 7. Almost identical. So then it's going to come down to the running game because if you just look at both of these, they're almost identical stat lines, which means they can both pass the football almost the same amount. Then the Redskins have Perine. I hope that I'm not butchering that person's name, but 465 yards rushing and a touchdown. Not really their thing. Versus Melvin Gordon, who has 775 yards rushing and 5 touchdowns, and I think that is ultimately going to be the key here because both of these quarterbacks are almost identical, but the running game, Chargers have a lot higher than the Washington Redskins. I think the Chargers win this game by the same amount they won by last week. They win it by 9. Then we have one of the games of the week. To me, this honestly is the most intriguing game of the entire week. The 10-2 Philadelphia Eagles taking on the 9-3 Los Angeles Rams in LA. Rams 2.5-point favorites over the Philadelphia Eagles, especially after their loss against the Seahawks last week. The Eagles ranked 3rd in offense and 3rd in defense. Meanwhile, the Rams ranked 4th in offense and 15th in defense. However, once again, like I've been saying, especially in the recap of last week's games, the Eagles' schedule is just not enough. You know, they might be 3rd in offense and defense against, a bunch of garbage teams, but they played 2 teams with a winning record this season, and they lost one of them. And until their other team that they lost to gets a winning record, I mean, it's pretty garbage. It's a pretty garbage, schedule that they have, and they've only played 2 teams with a winning record, and they lost one of them. So I'm not entirely convinced. But what I do know is going to be huge is that the Eagles have only allowed 68.1 rushing yards per game. Todd Gurley is one of the top running backs in the league with 939 yards rushing and 8 touchdowns. If Todd Gurley can run the football for over 100 yards, the Rams win this game. And I think that's going to be the key, and I think that's going to actually happen. The Rams win it by 6. I think that both of these offenses are very solid offenses, and the defenses, aren't going to play it nearly as much of a factor in this game. But I think that if the LA Rams, who are a much more balanced team, can run the football for over 100 yards in this game, I think they win this game by 6. It's going to be close because the Eagles usually keep it close, but I think that the Rams end up winning this game. Moving on now, we've got the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are 8-4 at home, 2.5-point favorites, taking on that 8-4 Seahawks team. 2 of the better defenses in the league. Surprisingly enough, of course, the Jaguars have the best defense in the league, but the Seahawks have the 9th best defense in the league, and the Jaguars 11th in offense, the Seahawks 10th in offense. So that's going to be a huge key here. And I think another thing that's going to be a key is the Jaguars allow less than 200 passing yards per game, the best pass defense in the entire NFL by far. And I think they win this game by 7. Russell Wilson has to do so much for his team already. That's why he's an MVP candidate, and I just don't think it's going to be enough. The Jaguars aren't any pushovers. On top of that, they're at home. And I think that, with the Eagles game last week, the Seahawks exposed a team that really isn't as good as their record says they are. And I think that the Jaguars are as good as their record says they are, and on top of that, maybe even better. The number 1 pass defense in the entire NFL, and I think that is going to be the key here in this game, and I think the Seahawks aren't going to be able to overcome that great pass defense. Russell Wilson's going to have at least 2 interceptions in this game, I think, and the Jaguars win this game. And then the Sunday night game, we've got the 7-5 Ravens struggling to try and make the playoffs. They're taking on a 10-2 Steelers team in Pittsburgh, who are 5-point favorites. The Ravens, of course, moved up to 30th in offense, 7th in defense, versus 7th in offense for the Steelers and 4th in defense. And I think that's going to be a huge key here. Not only that, but the Ravens at home are 4-2, right? Pretty solid. 3-3 on the road, and that's where most of their losses come from. And I think that's going to be another key. The Ravens just don't play well on the road, and I think that they're going to lose this game against Pittsburgh the Ravens always keep it close, but I think the Steelers win this one by 3 in a very close defensive football game that the Ravens just, again, not good enough on the road to win this game. And then finally, we've got a blowout city on our hands. The New England Patriots, 11.5-point favorites against the 5-7 Dolphins. You've got the number one offense in the entire league taking on the number 29 ranked offense in the entire league. And I think the Patriots win by 28. There's not much to really say about this game other than that the Patriots are probably going to destroy the Miami Dolphins in South Beach. And thank you all for watching this video. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. And we'll see you next week for the recap as well as the second round of picks for the college football Capital One Bowl Mania selections. So we'll see you then, and thanks for watching.